Yeah, I was just asked about the crime or criminality here in Guadeloupe. It's like, there's some criminality going on in Pointe-a-Pitre, of course. It's the biggest town. It's like in every other big town where you have poorer populations, parts of poorer families, and also, of course, social buildings and social apartments. So the criminality rate is the highest. It's comparable to any other big town, London.
This is St. Anne.
London, Paris, or Berlin, where you have some. Nothing ever happened to me. So if you walk around and if you want to get to enjoy Pointe-a-Pitre later on when you come back to the cruise, you can do it without worries. Just take care of your stuff like you would in any other big town. That's what I usually recommend everybody. So we are now back in St. Anne, and you can see now it's really pretty busy here in town center. It's a very famous place for people to spend their weekend on the beach and tourists to come. And as there's this other big cruise at the harbor at the moment, I think a lot of tourists took just a private cab and came to the beach here in St. Anne, and you can see little parts of the beach. If you look left through these little streets, because the beach is just on the other side of the road. So now we are driving again through St. Anne, and now you can see the other part, and over there at the edge of the island, up there, if you turn around this corner, there is the beach of Club Med, of this Plage de la Caravelle, the very beautiful beach I mentioned before. So that would be a nice place to go if you came back for. You can make it in barbecue, and you have either you can paddle, or you can have a motor, and then you go your picnic. I know they're from Germany already. We have them on River State. Yeah, but like it's the first time like this. It wasn't here last season. What are they called? I don't even know in French what they call it. I could tell you in German. Well, as you're passing by the cemetery again, there is this is really a tradition, and what happens at the cemeteries when there is a funeral in Guadeloupe, it's not really too much about grieving. It's more celebrating the life the person had lived. So yesterday, for example, I wanted to go home after work, and I couldn't find a parking spot, and I was like, my goodness. And in town center, close to where I live, there is a funeral place, and actually there was a funeral. That's why it was so packed and so busy, and there were so many people, and they were celebrating and eating and drinking, and I was like, wow, impressed. So once again, I just noticed how big the difference is, because in Germany we are more about grieving and being sad and not really talking and remembering, but here it's more celebrating the life of the person who has passed away. And everybody's dressed in black and white, again, these two colors. And in these houses, there's this big cemetery in Monalo that I mentioned before, and 1847, and of course back in the days only colonialist families could afford to live on these houses, but nowadays it's changed a bit, so it's not very cheap. But as it's not only the main family who is buried in these houses, but generations of families, they all put together the money and they afford a little place, and then basically the family or friend of the family builds the house, and then you have little rooms that you can open. Most of the times it's 4, so when people are being put in there, it's not only one part of the family, it's generations. So and after a couple of years they get rid of the bones, so empty it, and then there's room for more. And people do it actually because they believe in a life after the body has passed away, so the soul keeps on living, and they want to build a little house for the soul to live in once they pass away. So that is actually the story about these cemeteries that you can find basically in every town and every area in Guadeloupe. If you're interested in getting a little bit out of the house or out of the cruise later on when we get back after lunch, you could easily walk into town center, because town center is just right around the corner. It's maybe 5 to 10 minutes walk depending on how fast you walk, to the pedestrian area of Pointe-a-Pitre. And the town, I always say, it's not the most beautiful town of the world, but it's definitely interesting to see. It's very lively on a Saturday, so if you can go, you should, because sometimes there's also music being played, the local music on the little market that you find in Pointe-a-Pitre. They play the drums, they are called goka, and they have nice dress, clothing shops. There was one person who mentioned before, he was here, it's you, right? The escort person, he was here a week before, a week ago, and he went, or 2 weeks ago, he went shopping into town center and he found some nice shirts, so that could be an option. Besides, we have a nice cathedral that you could visit. It's not cathedral that you know like out of Europe, but it's definitely a nice one to visit. And there is one interesting house. It's a colonial style house. And there's a little bit of a story about this house, because there are actually 2 of these houses, the colonial style houses. The one that you can see in Pointe-a-Pitre is now there's the John Pierce Museum in it. John Pierce's museum is in that house now. But there's a second house. I don't know how you cannot see a bus coming. I mean, if you don't see a motorcycle, fine, but a bus, I think nobody wants to drive behind the bus. That's why they cut us off all the time. So, these houses, there are two, they look alike, and the story behind them is actually, there's a person in New Orleans, he ordered these houses, and the person who constructed them is apparently Gustav Eiffel, the guy who also constructed the Eiffel Towers. And one house is in between Moulins and Pointe-a-Pitre. It's called Maison de Ceballos. And the second of these houses is right in town center Pointe-a-Pitre. And the story is that they are actually haunted houses, ghost houses, because nobody wants anything to do with them. So if you ask, usually when we stop at the house with other cruises in Moule, ask the bus driver if he wants to have them. And besides one wanted to have it, all people do with these houses, because they... if you have more to do than just visit these houses, you're going to be sick, or you become insane, or you're going to die. So everybody's scared because they believe in black magic here a lot. And one of these houses you can see in Pointe-a-Pitre. It was constructed in between 1867 and 1870. Then it was to be transported to New Orleans from France, but it got stuck. It got hit by a hurricane or a big storm on the ocean, and so they couldn't continue their way. And then the houses ended here. know, another option if you want to go, I don't know at what time you're going to be back on the cruise exactly. Some people said 4:30, something like that. 5:30. Oh, well, that's not too bad. So if you want to go to have some beach time, maybe on your own, you can also. The closest beach from the cruise is actually Gousier. This would be the closest beach. So there are usually taxis or cabs in front of the harbor, and they drive you. If there's no traffic, it's a 10 minutes drive. If there's traffic, that might be 20 minutes one way going to this beach. So, but the weather doesn't towards the front towards us. Well. Left-hand side now, everybody heading towards the beaches. It's quite packed on the left side, traffic-wise, because there's even though we have our roads are quite well done compared to other islands here, we still have a lot of traffic during rush hour and the most busiest parts. Did I say right side? On the left side. There's traffic. Sorry, I got a right-left weakness. So yeah, it's quite busy at times. So. But still, it's not that far towards Gousier Beach. Well, now I'm going to hand out some papers for you from your cruise. It's papers that you can fill out concerning the excursion if you liked it, if there are things that need to be improved. It's not for us, it's not for me, it's for your cruise. So in case you want things to change for the future, or if you were not happy, or if you were happy, you can all mention it on this little paper I'm going to give you. I hope I have enough. Sometimes it's not enough for all of you, but I think they have more of these papers at your reception. And as I said, you just give it back to people of the Vikings cruise, all right? Now we are back in Pointe-a-Pitre, and on the left-hand side you can see the hospital building of Guadeloupe. We have two public hospitals in Guadeloupe. There is one right here on the left-hand side now. There's this big building that you can see. It looks a bit old from outside, but inside it's alright. You basically got everything you need. And all this is the complex of the university hospital, and it's quite developed as well because it is part of Europe, so we have everything that we need. And I know that there's even an exchange program for German medicine students. So every now and then we happen to meet some of them at the beach. They're here for 4 to 6 months, and they're doing their practical period here in Pointe-a-Pitre at this university. And there's another official public hospital in Grand-Terre. Besides, we have private clinics where you can go if you have the supplementary health insurance that I mentioned before. And now we're driving through Pointe-a-Pitre where we got here, and you can see these higher buildings. They're only here in town center, the social buildings and the buildings for a part of the population. And I will show you the town hall. Even though it's not very beautiful, I will still mention it, because over there you have the flag of France hanging there, and this grey looking building is the town hall of Pointe-a-Pitre on the right hand side. Here, this is Pointe-a-Pitre Town Hall, Hotel de Ville. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very ugly Hotel de Ville. But still, I was gonna mention it. And you see in town center there's a lot of people, a lot of things going on. Now you can see this is part of town center, and there's a parallel street where you can walk to the cathedral that is mentioned here. You have a lot of signs in town center, so it's very easy to find your way around. And if you want to have a map just of town center, there's the touristical office that is open right in front of the harbor, where you can have a map of town center Pointe-a-Pitre.